Alright, ladies and gentlemen, today I have a quick video showing you how to get more FPS and less stutter. If you're somebody on a lower to medium end PC and you're struggling to get decent performance in this game, I'm going to show you what I did on my lower end streaming PC that pretty much eliminated stuttering and raised my FPS by about 30 to 40 points. Make sure and stick around until the end because I'm going to show you a few other PC configurations I also had set that might have contributed to the performance increase as well. Now recently I just put out a benchmark video comparing all the different upscale settings on the Resurgence map Vandal. I ended up downloading the game to my streaming PC just so I could get some screenshots for the benchmark video, and when I loaded into a Resurgence game, my FPS ended up being super low and I was getting a ton of lag and stutter. The first game I was down around 50 to 60 FPS and the stuttering was absolutely ridiculous. After that, I did realize I was actually in 1440p because that's what my streaming PC monitor was set to, so I lowered it to 1080 and then loaded into the next game, but my FPS was still low, pretty much staying in the 70s and 80s, and I was still getting some lag and stutter. After that, I just started messing around with the settings to see if I could get the game to run any better, and to my surprise, I ended up finding a combination of settings that pretty much eliminated the stuttering altogether, and it brought my FPS up into the 120s and 130s. You can even see the difference in my 1% lows when you look at the before and after videos. Before, I was only getting 10 to 15 frames per second, and then after, my 1% lows jumped up into the 70s. So the first time around, I had my in-game settings set pretty much how everybody else has them, pretty much the meta settings for Warzone. I was using Fidelity FX Cast for my upscale setting with sharpening set to 75. My render resolution was set to 100. I was using Filmic T2 times, anti-aliasing quality normal, video memory scale set to 90, and then I had texture resolution set to normal and texture filtering set to normal as well. I did lower the texture resolution to low, but it only helped a little. This setting is actually really important, and we're going to circle back to it in a few minutes. Now everything was pretty much set to low and off except for spot cache. I did have that set to ultra just because everybody always said it made the game run better, and then like I said before, anything below this I had it set to off and low. The settings in the configuration file were all set to default. I hadn't touched them yet when I ran my first couple of games. Now in my streaming PC, I have a 2060 Super and an old i7. It's a 10700F. With the settings configured to how I first had them, the performance was pretty bad. I originally played on this computer up until about a month and a half after Warzone 2 released, and looking back and knowing what I know now, it wasn't really the graphics card that was the main problem, it was more the CPU that was causing most of the issues. Warzone 2 is ridiculously CPU intensive, and it causes bottlenecking, which results in much lower FPS and all kinds of stuttering issues. Even my Ryzen 9 and my gaming PC bottlenecks, and it causes my GPU to only get up to around 65%. Now when I started switching the settings, the first thing I did was come up the texture resolution and switched it to very low. You can see here that this specific setting actually says it has a medium effect on the CPU. Texture filtering anisotropic has a low effect as well, and there's also a few others that also have a low effect, but texture resolution has the highest effect according to Call of Duty, and it's the only setting with an effect level above low. So knowing that this game causes issues with the CPU, I ended up setting it to very low in order to minimize that effect. Surprisingly, it didn't change the graphics all that much. After that, I went through and made sure that any setting that said it affected the CPU was also set to its lowest option possible. There's 6 settings that affect the CPU. The first one we're going to go over last just because it has the highest effect on the GPU, but the other 5 are texture resolution, texture filter anisotropic, bullet impacts, on-demand texture streaming, and volumetric quality. You just want to go through and make sure they're all set as low as they go. After that, we also want to try and keep the effect on the GPU and the VRAM down as well. I'm going to go down the list and show the settings that I changed, and anything up here above texture resolution, I'm going to come back to that and go over it last. Alright, so the first 3 settings that I changed were texture resolution, texture filter anisotropic, and particle quality. I set them all to their lowest setting. Particle quality level I left on low just because it has a really low effect on the VRAM, but it affects the picture quality quite a bit if you try to set it to very low. Bullet impacts I have off because it's one of the settings that affect the CPU, and you always want to make sure on-demand texture streaming is off no matter what kind of computer you have. Make sure streaming quality is on low. It affects both the VRAM and the GPU, and if you're on a lower end card, it can help quite a bit. Volumetric quality is one of the CPU settings, and it has a significant effect on both the VRAM and the GPU as well. You want to make sure it's set to low. All of these others are the same as before, all low. Make sure shadow map resolution is on very low to help with that GPU usage. Now spot cache, I switched it to low because it has a very high effect on the VRAM. I know people say Ultra helps with stuttering, but I didn't notice any difference in the stuttering when I switched it, and it seems to help with FPS quite a bit. Everything else is just off and low like before. Just go down the list and set them all exactly how I have them. Okay, so now we're gonna go back up and take a look at this section here. Just make sure the quality preset is on custom because it will change your settings if it's not. Now, the first important setting here is render resolution. Make sure you're not going above 100. And not only do you wanna make sure it's at 100, make sure it doesn't say anything above 1920 by 1080 over here on the left. Now, if you're on a 1440p monitor or higher and it's set to default on your PC and then you accidentally have full screen borderless enabled, the game might default to your monitor's native resolution, causing massive FPS and stuttering issues, especially on lower to medium end PCs. You won't even know it unless you look over here on the left because it will still say 100, only over here it's going to say 3840 by 2160 or 2160 by 1440. If you tab out of the game, a lot of times it just switches to full screen borderless, and once you get back in the game, you won't even know it unless you look. Like I said before, my streaming PC has a 4K monitor, so watch what happens when I switch to full screen borderless. It still says 1920 by 1080 here, except it's locked, but when I switch over to the quality tab, it says 3840 by 2160, meaning the game is trying to run in true 4K. This PC couldn't handle 1440, let alone 2160. Just always make sure you're checking this here, and always make sure it's in full screen exclusive, especially if your monitor or your TV is higher than 1080. Plus, you can see the difference in the VRAM usage between the two. One way to avoid this is always make sure your render resolution in Windows and in your GPU settings is set to 1920 by 1080. Now, another thing you can do to increase FPS quite a bit is drop down the render resolution below 100. When I dropped it from 100 to 90, I got a significant frame increase. It took me from the 130s to the 140s. Now, it will lower the image quality a little bit, but if you increase the sharpness and the saturation on your monitor or on your PC, it won't look all that different, and it's an easy way to get more FPS. Now, for upscaling, you want Fidelity FX Cast. It's going to give you the best image quality with everything set to low. I just did a whole video comparing all the different upscaling options. If you haven't seen it yet, check it out. But in the test, Fidelity FX Cast beats out all the other options in FPS except AMD FSR 1.0 set to performance, but the image quality on that is just way too low, especially on lower end setups. I would set the strength to either 70 or 75, don't go any lower. For anti-aliasing, you want Filmic SMAAT 2 times. The other option is going to lower the image quality too much for how low we have the settings. Now, anti-aliasing quality, I had that on normal, but when I lowered the render resolution to 90, I tried setting it to high to see what it would do to the picture quality, and to my surprise, I didn't notice any difference in FPS, but it did help the image quality quite a bit. I tested all four options, and there isn't much of a noticeable difference in performance. If you lower the render resolution, try switching it to high. Now, the last setting in here is video memory scale. I have it set to 90. You want Call of Duty to take priority on your GPU. If you have a super low budget graphics card, you might want to lower it, but anything 10 series and up for NVIDIA, keep it at 90 in here. Now that brings me to the configuration file. Go down to the yellow folder at the bottom of your desktop, click Documents and then Call of Duty. Go to the Players folder and find options.3.cod22 and open it up. Once you open it, scroll all the way to the bottom to where it says System. Find where it says use large physical textures and make sure it says false in between the parentheses. If you're on a lower end PC and it says true, just delete it and type in false, all lowercase letters. Next, you want to come up here to where it says thread count for handling the job queue. Write in half the number of your total cores. So if your PC has 8 total cores, you want to write in 4 in between the parentheses. Now, I didn't notice much of a difference in FPS between 8 and 4, but since this is a lower end PC playing a game that's pretty taxing on the CPU, having the other 4 cores available for other computer functions should help if your PC is struggling. If anything ever seems worse after changing this or anything else in here, just come back in and change it back. Now, the last thing in here I want to show you is set a target fraction of your PC's video memory to be used by the game. Now, this is the same video memory scale setting that's in the options menu. The only difference is in here you can set it higher. I have a whole video going over this I put out a few months ago. Back then, a lot of people were seeing a benefit by changing this from 0.9 to 2.0, but for some reason it seemed to stop having an effect for a while. Changing this wasn't making much of a difference. But a couple days ago, I started testing it again on my streaming PC. I didn't notice much much of a difference with FPS, but it did make the game feel noticeably more responsive and snappy, and I immediately noticed the game felt a lot less sluggish. Try it out, see if you notice a difference. If you're on anything lower than a 20 series card, you might want to try something lower like 1.0 or 1.5, but if your game starts stuttering or freezing, make sure you come back in here and change it back. And if that happens, just use the in-game option, maybe even set it to something lower like 70 or 80. Now, if you're on a 20 series card or higher, try 2.0, see how it feels. Just remember to write down whatever you change in here, just in case you need to change it back. Now, I would just start with changing the settings in the in-game options first, see how it feels, and then after a few games, come back in here and change these. That way there, you'll know what's actually helping. Now, once you're done in here, just remember to go up to where it says File and click Save. After you close it out though and you open up the game, come back in here and make sure it actually saved. I've been having to save it like 2 or 3 times before it actually takes. Now, the last thing I'm going to show you is in the Windows settings. You want to hit the Windows button, go to Settings, find Gaming, and then go to Game Mode, and try turning the game mode off once you've tried everything else. I noticed I was getting better FPS with game mode off for some reason. I tested it quite a bit the other night, and on my low-end streaming PC, I was getting better performance with it turned off, but on my higher-end gaming PC, it runs a lot better with it on. It's weird, I know, test it for yourself, see if you notice a difference in how the game feels. Same thing with hardware accelerated GPU scheduling. Try both, let me know what you think. Before the Season 5 Reloaded update, the game felt better with it off, but after the update, the game feels more responsive with it on. They definitely did something to increase FPS with this latest update. Maybe they fixed the game so hardware acceleration actually works now. Now guys, I'm going to have a video out soon on lowering 1% lows and a video on color settings. I'm not going to be doing a ton more PC videos on this game. I'm going to be starting Modern Warfare 3 videos soon, but make sure to subscribe so you get notified about future content related to this game and all the new videos coming with Modern Warfare 3. If you found this video helpful, drop a like. Follow me over on Twitter to stay up to date on everything Warzone 2 and Modern Warfare 3, and subscribe to the YouTube channel for more short, straight-to-the-point videos like this. I'll catch you next time, and if not, kick rocks. Peace.
Kick rocks, biatch!